So let's talk White Mage and Endwalker, and this is a topic that I've been a little hesitant to talk about because White Mage and Endwalker, my thoughts on it are... I might be whacking a hornet's nest with this one, but I'm a little bit concerned to say the least. And I do want to say, this does not come from a place of bad faith or of not liking the White Mage. I love the White Mage, and even though I'm playing Scholar Sage, my co-healer, my boyfriend going into Endwalker is playing White Mage almost 100%. Don't take this as hate. I want to see the White Mage be as strong as it possibly can be. So getting into that is the White Mage is undeniably strong. It is a healer that doesn't really leave you wanting too much. It has abilities like Cure 3, Plenary Indulgence, which can be combined with Afflatus Rapture for bizarre amounts of healing, Temperance, which is such a wide, such a powerful healing amp, as well as a damage mitigation. They have AST, they have Benediction, not to mention they are the only healer with a built-in DPS buff. I know that people are gonna flame me in my comments for saying what, but that is what it is. Come on, guys. Please don't get me wrong. Please don't take away that I'm trying to dump on the White Mage or yuck your yum or whatever phrase people are using. But I have concerns, and I'm genuinely hoping that by bringing them up, I can start a conversation about it. The structure of this video is I'm going to have a few main talking points that I'm going to have that kind of naturally flow from one and build off that to the next, which builds off that talking point into the next one. So let's begin with the first talking point, which is the White Mage has a significantly reduced off-global cooldown kit when compared to other healers. And this is not just a minor effect, it is extremely pronounced even when comparing the White Mage to explicitly the other pure healer, the Astro. Except if we compare AoE healing, where not only does the Astro have literally double the options simply in name, but when it comes down to the cooldowns and charges, it's just flat out general availability for the Astro is significantly, and I mean very significantly, higher than the White Mage. Talking about things like Collective Unconscious, Celestial Opposition, Earthly Star, even Horoscope, that are all going to be at 60-second cooldown timers. Lady of Crowns is RNG, so kind of not really maybe, but it is RNG, but when it is up, that's another option. Macrocosmos, which is a bizarrely powerful capstone of the AST, is at a 120-second cooldown, so once every 2 minutes. Now when we look at the White Mage, they have AST size at a pretty solid 45-second cooldown. I'm not going to say that's bad, it's pretty darn good, followed by Asylum at, and now we're starting to get to the pinch, 90 seconds. And then their only other AoE off-global cooldown ability is Lilybell, and for the record, oh my god, don't think that I think this is weak. I think that this has a metric ton of potential as an ability. It is amazing. But, and it's a huge one, is 80 seconds or 3 minutes for this. So I have a lot of feelings about Lilybell and how badly that I do wish it was 2 minutes. I think that as I go through this video, you're going to start seeing why I have that feeling. Also, compared to like some other abilities that the White Mage has, it is comparatively amazing and will be great for so many mechanics. Like I'm thinking immediately, like this was literally built for terminal relativity like mechanics just with the AoE spam. It will handle that beautifully. This is literally a handcrafted answer for that. But the problem is at 3 minutes, it does feel pretty severely restricted compared to the other healers. Like Macrocosmos is at 2 minutes. Don't tell me Macrocosmos isn't going to be a good ability. It's going to be very strong, but that is a discussion for later. Even when we look at off-global cooldown single target heals, while the White Mage brings Benediction that is all too well known to save Dark Knights, it is at a whopping 180-second cooldown. In comparison, the AST gets Essential Dignity that is on a 2-charge system where you get a charge every 40 seconds. Outside of situations where Benediction does shine, like recovering a tank buster, in my opinion at least, please don't flame me too hard, I'm trying to be honest guys, honestly, Benediction's great, but it's overwhelmed by Essential Dignity. I will choose Essential Dignity almost every single day of the week. That's really one of the things that made me really enjoy Nocturnal Astrologian. And even when you compare it to White Mage's Tetragrammaton, which is going to be something that would, I guess, be a more direct analog to Essential Dignity, it's at 800 potency on a 60-second cooldown timer. And it still looks really bad to Essential Dignity that can scale all the way up to 1100 potency. 2 charges can be held, and you get it back at 40 seconds. That's literally 2/3 of the time of one Tetragrammaton. The general point of this is that off-global cooldown healing for the White Mage, whether it's single target, whether it's AoE, is significantly, severely, and undeniably less available than it is for any other healer. This is actually a hilariously more pronounced effect when you look at the Sage or Scholar. Like, it is definitely a very different type of healing. That brings us to ask, is the White Mage doomed? Answer, no, because this is actually something that is very easy to scale and tune for. Let me posit to you this question. The benefit of off-global cooldown healing spells like Collective Unconscious or Essential Dignity and so on is that you can keep your damaging on-global cooldown sacred so you can keep spamming damage, right? So utilizing that off global cooldown window to maximum effect so you can still spam your DPS spell. That's the name of the game, right? So if that is true, and generally speaking it is, what if the damage you put out in general as a consequence or a trade-off of being able to do that off GCD was lower than someone that doesn't have the trade-off of having that off GCD availability? Or to try and make it, probably make a little bit more sense or explain it differently, is meaning that the other healers could still cast on global cooldown healing spells when necessary and still maintain the same level of damage, just because their damage output options are so much higher. At this point, it's like a trade-off of how you're really healing. So I present to you Fall Malefic at the Media Tour potency of 250 and Glare at 310 potency, meaning 60 potency difference. Of course, this begins to branch off into intricacies between them, like the AST has the card system versus Afflatus Misery and damage recuperation systems in the White Mage, and AST size versus Macrocosmos, and so on. Literally would be here, and you've seen the length of my Ultimate Guide videos, we would be here literally for 5 hours if I start diving into those details. My point that I'm trying to really make is that this particular aspect of damage can be tuned, but it does raise a lot of concerns and questions in my and other people's mind about, will the AST simply run over the White Mage? And is that a fair question? Everyone's gonna ask, is that a fair question? Is that clickbait? The problem is when you look at FF logs, which is the closest thing that we have to real game data, like not officially from like the official devs, but it's the closest thing that we'll ever get. We're looking at AST and Scholar, which are the de facto speedrunning composition even right now. It's AST Scholar, not White Mage. And it's not by a little margin either. Looking at the screenshot that I just took from FF Logs, you can see White Mage being absolutely left in the dust at a very, very small 14%. Take that with a big grain of salt, a boulder of salt, because we do know that the 14 developers are extremely focused on balance, and so my concerns about long-term consequences of this are extremely small, but at the start of the expansion, we might see a little bit of pain. This builds into talking point number 2, which is a genuine concern of mine that might actually become impactful even if tuning knobs are turned. Right now, I've been cute and I've played dumb about AST and White Mage off global cooldowns. We all know by now, by this point, that the AST can layer on their Medica 2 equivalent called Aspected Helios to take alongside Collective Unconscious. An Earthly Star can be placed down on the field, they can have Horoscope out there, they can now proc Macrocosmos. They can really have all of those up at once and really, as a side effect of that, ramp up their healing from simple baselines such as just casting off the global cooldown of Collective Unconscious, just a trickle of healing, to ramping up by adding Aspected Helios, to ramping up even more, add Macrocosmos, to even more with Earthly Star. Like, you have a very, on the AST, just because they have so many off GCDs available, they have a very available ramp where they can go step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 7 very quickly if they want to. Of course, they could run out of gas, that's a consequence, but they have that option. Don't get me wrong, the White Mage does have alternatives. They can place down Asylum, 90-second cooldown. They can place down Lilybell, 3-minute cooldown. They could even theoretically save up AST size for that. 45-second cooldown, which yes, is more available. Just looking at the cooldowns, don't peddle me the snake oil that suddenly AST is not going to have any of their other options up more available. They're like mostly on 60-second cooldown. Meaning that in general gameplay, that the White Mage's alternative to that is just casting other on GCD burst heals such as Cure 3. It introduces a subtle nuance that pretty much anyone that's played AST knows, which the AST can layer things and produce profound amounts of healing when they need to. Just step 1, step 2, step 7. But even when we're talking about Neutral Sect, which is another ability, to say the absolute least, I have played very dumb about Neutral Sect up until now. This quite literally gives them 20% more healing potency, which is no different than Temperance, but what is wildly different is that the AST is now placing a barrier in addition to the baseline regeneration and heals, more than doubling the throughput of the AoE heal or tripling single target. Speaking from personal experience, this Neutral Sect ability on its own, and I'm talking about on its very own, has trivialized current Shadowbringers game mechanics like terminal relativity with successive blows of heavy damage, and I do actually mean trivialized. It is bizarrely strong. Speaking numbers, Aspected Helios and Endwalker Meteor was 250 baseline potency with a 150 heal over time tick. So 250 multiplied by 1.20 is going to be 300 potency baseline. 300 potency baseline heal multiplied by 1.25, which is the barrier multiplier, is a 375 potency barrier. So that means successive mitigation from the AST is going to be 300 plus 375 is going to be 675 total throughput of mitigation. Or rather, I should say just like raw HPS, especially if we're talking successive mechanics. It's just going to be wave like crashes on the barrier, then hits the HP, you apply a new barrier. It's just very, very profound effect. Now let's look at the White Mage. Let's turn our eye to the White Mage. So Cure 3 is theoretically 600 potency, so when you're popping Temperance, that's 20% more healing, just the same. So that's gonna make Cure 3 is 720 potency, which is extremely powerful burst healing, do not get me wrong, but that's why I'm also saying it is so insane that the AST can do with neutral Sect what they can. And reeling it back to the problem is that comes at the fact that Cure 3 costs 1,500 MP and Aspected Helios is 800. So a White Mage trying to keep up with this is going to absolutely flatten their MP. Let's not play super stupid here. Let's combine this with the fact that AST is also reapplying their heal over time from Aspected Helios every single time they cast that, whereas the White Mage is going to have to stop casting Cure 3 and cast a Medica 2 to apply the heal over time effect, and then add in the layering effect from before with their plentiful OGCD heals, the AST can definitely do a lot of ramping. And so what I am left with right now is I do see this as a genuine pain point going forward into Endwalker, even though Lilybell seems like it was explicitly designed to resolve spammed heavy damage like Terminal Relativity, and I mean like handcrafted for it. Like, it is a beautiful ability for that case, but it is at a 3-minute cooldown, and so I can see, depending on how the raid is designed, successive terminal relativity like mechanics in 2-minute or 60-second intervals comparatively overwhelming a White Mage versus an AST. It could do it, no doubt. White Mage has a huge throughput, especially like they'll have 2 Lilies up at that time, they will probably have Asylum up at that time. No, 90 seconds, they won't have Asylum up at that time, but like the White Mage can do it, but it wouldn't be nearly as graceful. And so like the 3-minute terminal relativity intervals, I should say though, will literally be laughed at by a White Mage. Like, Lilybell is the most perfect answer for anything like that, like successive raid-wide incoming damage that I could ever imagine in my life. But I think that we are also like ignoring the fact that AST Macro Cosmos can also be very hilarious too. Keep in mind though that Lilybell is 3 minutes cooldown and Macrocosmos is 2 minutes. I know I've said it before, but can Lilybell please be 2 minutes? I think that that would be far easier in my mind to justify, because I'm just thinking, how often do I use Benediction? I kind of hold it. Unless there's like an explicit tank buster that I know I need to mitigate, I generally hold it for emergencies. Which brings us into talking point 3. White Mage's MP costs built into their baseline kit are extremely, and I mean extremely high in comparison to the AST. When we're just looking at them side by side, 300 MP is saved for the AST versus White Mage for Medica, and Astro's Medica equivalent. Medica 2 equivalent is 500 MP difference. That's huge. Cure 2 difference is 300 MP difference, and even regen has the AST saving 100 MP. Let's not forget though that White Mage's really big burst ability, their capstone, Cure 3, is at 1,500 MP, meaning that the White Mage is just draining their MP through their kit. So this is where we talk about like the talking points and how they built off one another, is that the baseline cost for the White Mage to perform with their OGCD heals, which is obviously expected because they have a limited off global cooldown kit, is extremely high. While the White Mage does get Thin Air, and its modification to 2 charges that recover every 60 seconds is going to make raising a huge MP cost, because raising is extremely expensive. It's quoted at 2,400 MP. Remember, Cure 3 is 1,500 though. But for gameplay not involving a ton of deaths, the problem is I don't see the White Mage really breaking even just with Thin Air. I don't see it. thin air. I'm not trying to say it's weak, but I don't see it breaking even unless there's a lot of resin going off. Now when we look at the AST will always be able to guarantee MP regen, at least MP regen through Astrodyne, and every 30 seconds withdraw. And Astrodyne's going to give that because even if they somehow have all of the same seal type, Astrodyne baseline with one seal type gives you that MP regen. And then likewise every 30 seconds withdraw, they're going to get the cards. Likewise the ASTs are probably going to be saving up 2 cards probably for the raid buff window every minute, so we might see some shenanigans there, so it might add up to actually be a lot more MP resolution than probably one would normally think. Technically, the White Mage, however, does get the Lily system, which is free. The Lily spells are free for MP, but generally speaking, I want to bring that again in talking point 4. So point 4 is really White Mage's expensive heal cast on the GCD versus off-global cooldowns, which for the record, off-global cooldowns are free, is really my next talking point. So even if the developers perfectly balance for healer's damage output and make it so that the White Mage isn't penalized as heavily for casting on GCD healing, really the MP costs, as just discussed, are severe, which in an environment demanding a ton of healing, I can see the White Mage struggling with their MP resources compared to an AST. The simple reason why is that the White Mage's off GCD kit is, as we've established, is very, very limited, like the first talking point went over. But one perk of off-global cooldown abilities that almost no one really mentions because everyone's so focused on like, oh, cast these so that you can like open up more room to DPS, is that they cost absolutely no MP, meaning that every single charge and every single off GCD ability used really relieves your MP pool from being drained. From comparing the White Mage to the AST side by side, even in single target scenarios, the AST simply has far more options, far more options, which White Mage's Lily system, I should state, does relieve some pressure here, costing no MP per Lily spellcast. But the problem is that those come back 1 every 30 seconds in combat, and you don't start a raid with all 3 Lilies available, meaning largely the White Mage in comparison will be chugging MP with their limited OGCD pool combined with significantly higher MP costs on their on-GCD abilities that they'll be forced to cast. Which really the takeaway is I can see without changes that a White Mage might be gasping for MP compared to the AST and Endwalker without changes, which does concern me a lot. I keep bringing it up, but that's like the ability that was added to the White Mage's kit for Endwalker, which is Lilybell, while significantly powerful, at 3 minutes does not go far to relieving this pressure or concern in my mind. Now, my 5th talking point is Afflatus Misery, and this is something that I hope I can get tuned and altered. Really, I think that is the biggest concern with this, but for those who aren't familiar with White Mage, is Afflatus Misery isn't actually a reward. In fact, if you are chugging Lilies in the middle of combat when you could cast Glare, then you're actually taking a DPS loss for doing it, so you should generally speaking not feel the same pressure that a Scholar or a Sage would feel to pop Aether Flow or Adder Skull. To be clear, I am not talking about intermission transition phases for bosses, but generally speaking, when you could cast Glare and you're just throwing a Lily just because you have a Lily, you're actually taking DPS loss. You should sit on them, generally speaking. I know that there are edge cases people will bring up in the comments, I know, but generally speaking. Really, what the Lily system is doing is it is acting as damage recuperation, as recovery of damage that you would have lost. Because as a White Mage, because of the limited off-global cooldown pool, you are going to be forced to heal on the GCD, and so the Lily system allows you to recover some of the damage that you lost because you needed to cast an on-GCD heal to prevent, obviously, a party wipe because you're a healer. It takes 4 global cooldowns specifically to get Afflatus Misery out, so you need to cast the 3 Lilies on the GCD and then Afflatus Misery itself on the GCD. Glare potency and Endwalker Media Tour was 310 potency. Obviously Media Tour values are subject to change, but 310 multiplied by 4 is 1240, which means that a 900 potency Afflatus Misery is significantly weaker, and as Glare's potency increases, it will become even weaker going into Endwalker, such as if the developers identified White Mage should, say, have 15% more damage through Glare, so 310 multiplied by 1.15 is going to give you 356.5 potency per Glare. Now 356.5 multiplied by 4 GCDs is going to be 1426, which now that means that the 900 potency Afflatus Misery is even weaker. I guess the sum of it is that this could easily be changed through a tuning knob, but just because in the Media Tour we aren't seeing that potency raised means that this White Mage is losing even more damage potency compared to the AST, or Sage, or Ninja, or literally any job in the game, I guess. Which really brings me to the conclusion of this video. To say the least, I love the White Mage, and there's no denying that it has a spot in the healer roster. Anyone saying otherwise is like I don't know, they're like out in outer space. But going into Endwalker, and I don't mean the moon, they are not in Endwalker before us, but going into Endwalker, I have some concerns that I hope can be alleviated. Specifically, on GCD healing versus damage output tuning, to make sure that the White Mage isn't punished too severely for casting on GCD heals because they need to with their kit. The next thing is Afflatus Rapture being buffed to keep it as a powerful damage recuperation tool. Thirdly is going to be White Mage's off-GCD kit of healing. Specifically, the only thing that I really think we need is Lilybell to be a 2-minute cooldown rather than 3. I think that would be balanced and fair and make the White Mage much stronger. Her Cosmos is 2 minutes, so I think that this is a very fair thing to hope for. Then lastly, mana costs of the White Mage I really hope to get reduced, because right now compared to the AST they are sky high. Anyhow, that's really it for this video, and I am genuinely hoping for a conversation, so let me know what you think in the comments. Anyhow, that's it for this one. Take care and have a glorious day, everyone.